Oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Spreadsheet open, numbers looking fine, but deep inside you know you're flying.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are. Hopefully, that intro got you pumped up to listen to today's topic. If you want to listen to our weekly wisdom music song, you can go back into my LinkedIn profile at Dan Griffith SR, and listen to that, and hopefully be inspired with today's topic, which is seriously, don't guess what's in your pipeline. I'm subtitling that the $10 million spreadsheet that was really 100K. We'll get into that a little bit later today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dan Griffith. I'm the owner and founder of three different companies: Greater Gain Group, which helps founders of companies that are in their growth stage build sales and marketing engines that they can use to scale; Grow Digital, a full service digital marketing agency that helps the same companies; and then Grow with Dan, where you can schedule me to appear on your podcast or speak or write in whatever area that you might like me to write in. Stay tuned. There is rumors of a Seriously Don't Do That book coming up. So we'll talk a little bit more about that here in coming weeks and months. But back to today's topic: seriously, don't guess what's in your pipeline. So why is this important? Well, it's the hidden cost. I resisted the temptation this week to put the slide with the iceberg. Those of you that have been around for a little while know exactly what I'm talking about, with the part of the iceberg that is just above the water and then all that's below the water. In my early days doing my sales training at IBM, I feel like that was the middle of every presentation that we did, or maybe even the starting point. But there are a lot of things that are hidden under the surface. And I think specifically when you talk about bad pipeline data, and again, let me back up for a step and define what bad pipeline data is. It's essentially data that you don't trust. I like to say it's some company's pipeline data, wherever it may reside, is both aspirational and well, is number one, aspirational. Okay, so it's things that might happen, and number two is um, fictional. I'll just say, to be very blunt. So when we're talking about bad pipeline data, we want to think about what the impact is, and to me, that is destroying your CAC payback. So again, if you don't know what's in your pipeline, or can't trust, let me say it a little differently, can't trust what's in your pipeline, and you have no idea how that moves forward, then it's very, very hard for you to calculate your customer acquisition cost and your payback. And then absolutely affects your valuation multiples. I worked with a company a number of years ago that had a very robust pipeline from the looks of it, and was going through being acquired, or at least looking to be acquired. And it felt like every meeting that we went into with potential investors, that pipeline got ripped down more and more and more, because at the end of the day, there was no basis for it. And when I say there's no basis, there's really no structure to it. It existed in a spreadsheet. There was no clear entry and exit criteria. So again, the costs of this, while it may not be high today, certainly could be high in the very, very near future. So, want to start with a success story, which is always great to start with success stories. A couple months ago, I worked with a health tech platform founder who literally told me that their sales process was, quote, "We just kind of wing it." And I actually did not mean to have a dramatic pause, but I did have a dramatic pause after that, because I was just surprised that he said that part out loud, which is true, a lot of times of companies, but he was very, very forthright in saying that. And then I said, "Well, where do you keep your pipeline? Do you have a CRM or a spreadsheet?" And he said, again, being very forthright, It's mainly just in my head, which he admitted sheepishly. So what we were able to do is in a 4-week sprint with just 2 workshops, we mapped how their customers buy, created 5 clear stages with responsibilities, and implemented a simple CRM with pipeline reporting. Again, we can help you do that. You can certainly do that on your own. Um, but our business is about helping people do things that maybe they don't want to do or don't have time to do on their own. But the result here was closed 2 deals worth 300,000 and had their first real board report. And of course, their forecast variance dropped from complete guesswork to about 7% accuracy in 30 days. So again, this isn't something that takes a long time to fix, but I think your impact is very, very high, which is why I wanted to feature it in one of our weekly events. And of course, as always, come back to my LinkedIn profile tomorrow. You'll get to see the article, or those of you that are in YouTube or X watching this, you can come to the LinkedIn profile and see that there. So as I talk with success, I always like to share an epic failure. Normally, it's on my part. Sometimes it's a client. But the whole reason I started kind of the seriously don't do that live event, podcast, articles was I had seen over the years a number of companies that did things where I'd said seriously don't, and certainly things that I did that I wanted to share with others so they didn't have all the bumps and bruises. So, like I say here, I learned this lesson really the brutal way. I walked into a sales leadership role and was handed a beautiful spreadsheet showing $10 million in pipeline deals. So I thought, this is going to be easy. We just need to push these deals through to close. Seriously, don't ever do that. 2 months later, after committing to these aggressive numbers with the board, I discovered the painful truth. Only one deal was actually closable and it was worth about $100,000. So the spreadsheet was built on hope and not process. So, what can we do to fix this? So, number one, audit your current state. That means we want to identify phantom deals and data gaps. We certainly do this for our clients, a Greater Gain Group, but you can do it as well. We'll mention a little later of a resource that you can use to do that audit. It's a 10-step, pretty easy to score. You can also schedule a call with us to review that. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And of course, that'll be in our article back on LinkedIn tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about what that audit. Well, first of all, you got to get very honest with yourself and with your team as to where these deals are at. Probably a good qualifier is to say hope is not a strategy. But we want to examine those deals, make sure that we have a clear decision maker identified, that that decision maker can make that decision, or I like to say can write the check, that there is some urgency around this, meaning if they don't make a decision, the results could be disastrous, or they're compelled to make a decision in a fixed time. And then that this is really a problem that they have to fix. We talk a lot of times with early stage founders that have products that are awesome. They've spent a lot of time and effort, but unfortunately, it's not addressing a problem or challenge at this time that people are really invested in fixing. So I think that's, as you think about that audit, again, go and download our 10-step. You can actually leave a comment either on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and ask for that. We'll be glad to get that over to you. But go and look at that and then look at maybe what's missing. So I think that's the other thing that you need to think about is if you don't know some of these questions, you probably need to go back and re-examine. So first, audit your current state. Second, map your customer journey. How do they actually buy from you? It's amazing to me that because a lot of times we're engaging with customers that have sold. They may be a million or 2 million in revenue. Sometimes we engage with very, very early stage customers in our Grow Digital, in our marketing business that really haven't sold much, but many times very little thought has been put into how a customer actually buys something. I was talking yesterday with a representative of the Netherlands, and he works with healthcare and life science companies that are coming to the US from the Netherlands. And we were talking about the challenges around buying cycles. To his credit, he had a very clear understanding of kind of what all that involves. But if you haven't sat down and looked at how your customers actually buy, it's really important. And again, I want to be very clear. It's how they buy from you, not how you are selling, because there may be a disconnect there. So, that may involve, whatever that initial engagement is, or, talking with you, that additional, what we call an expression of interest. Um, who's included in that journey, um, the steps you have to go through. For oftentimes for software in highly regulated industries, there's an element of security. There's typically some type of an NDA that needs to be put in place. There's an architectural review board, depending on whether you're offering a hosted SaaS solution. So just making sure that you understand what that journey is, and that you map that out. And again, lots of tools out there to use that, but you can simply just use sticky notes if you'd like, in putting together what that process is and how long that takes. I'll mention another kind of real world example. I was talking earlier this week with a company that sells into, we'll call it providers or hospitals in the US market. And we were talking about, she used the phrase, "No is lurking around every corner," which I thought was awesome. I told her she probably ought to trademark that. But there's all these different areas in the process that can say no, which allows you to say, okay, this is what the length of our sales cycles are. And again, not going to get into this today, but also maybe how you can run some of those things in parallel. But the important thing is making sure that you map your customer journey. Number three, define those stages. We talked a little bit about that. No more than 5 or 6. I jokingly say, I work with some companies that when I look at their marketing and sales process, it's much more complex. And they're a couple $1 million company. It's much more complex than when I worked at IBM, and I felt like we had like a 23-step process. Um, so again, let's make sure that we use the KISS principle. Again, if you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm just saying keep it simple. Keep it very simple. Make sure that we've got those 5 or 6 stages. Again, if you want some guidance on that, we've done some previous sessions on that. We also have some worksheets that can help you kind of define those. But with these, you want a clear entry criteria. So, okay, what does it need to get into that stage? And then what does it mean to exit that stage? And then who has the responsibilities for that? I think sometimes as we work with clients, and as I've worked in my almost 30-year career, um, the first two can be done, the entry and exit, but there's no responsibility. So it's no idea who has the responsibility on moving that to the next stage. If you're working with a small team, it's normally pretty easy. If you've started to get into building, BDRs, SDRs, account executives, sometimes you have technical leads. It can get a little bit complex, but just make sure that you have what the entry is, what the exit is, and who is responsible for that stage. And then step 4, choose a simple CRM. I thought about when I put this slide together, I'm not advocating that you choose, quote, simple CRM. That is a product. I don't know much about that, so I can't recommend it. But choose something that you can use. It does not have to be complex. I think many times uh, founders and revenue leaders look at something like a Salesforce.com, which is great. Or a dynamic CRM, super deep, but really set up for large enterprise because you have to have somebody that maintains it, and there's a lot of integrations. And again, great for that. I think when you get to smaller companies, which is really where we work with, which is companies that are in that you know 1.5 million to maybe as high as 30 million space. Um, just get something simple that does a couple things. Allows you to lay out your process, allows you to enforce your process, allows you to generate reports. By the way, I will mention, if you need help with this, need help in building this process, we actually have some what we call productized offerings that specifically focus in on that and helping your team build that. Again, the goal there is not for us to be engaged for a long period of time. If you want to have us there, we'd love to be there, but we'd like to teach your team how to do it, help you do it, and then let you run that process. So if you need some help there, we also have some resources around how to choose a CRM, and we can even conduct some workshops for your team for that. And then finally, inspect weekly. Um, this is another area that surprises me that even if those first four steps are done splendidly, there's no weekly inspection process. And when I say inspection process, I think for a lot of people that has a negative connotation. I think about when I was younger. My dad would inspect our rooms every Sunday night. He was not a military man, but probably could have been because everything had to be top shape. The beds need to be made, the clutter put away, trash emptied. So every Sunday night we had inspection. And I have a negative connotation for inspection, but this is actually really a positive thing. And as a founder or as a revenue leader, just being engaged with your team doesn't have to be long, but set some time every week because if you don't, it won't happen. I always suggest, normally the end of the week, so maybe Friday. I know a lot of sales teams spend some time on Friday updating their CRM, kind of putting all their notes in. But setting that time, no more than an hour, where you walk through the pipeline, and then you have a collaborative team discussion on where things are, where are their blockers, and really kind of making progress as a team on that pipeline and making some decisions on that. I think early on, you may disqualify deals in those conversations, but I think eventually you're going to get to the point where really that focus is how do we take action in the next week or even better is what action did we take in this past week to move the pipeline forward and what are we doing next week, and it really just gives the team some focus and helps you become a sales driven organization. Again, another area where we have a productized offering to try to help you put that in place. So a tease on the quick win worksheet. This is a 10-point pipeline audit checklist, super easy to use. Helps you diagnose those gaps in 30 minutes. What we are offering today is not only that worksheet, which if you'll message us in the comments in whatever platform you're seeing this on, we'll be glad to get that to you. And then you'll also have the opportunity to book a 30-minute call where we go through and we assess that and just give you some clear kind of steps to walk away from that conversation with. So, not going to open it up to Q&A today because I'm doing it in a super short format today. We did not have a guest, so there isn't quite as much material. But I always say, what's your, put your comments and your questions down below. Again, whatever platform you're on. What's your biggest pipeline blind spot right now? And if you'll be glad to put that there, we'll be glad to answer those. Want to talk just real quick about next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about marketing, which we haven't talked about for a number of weeks. And it's going to be seriously, don't treat marketing as a spare time hobby. I find in talking with a lot of founders that there's a lot of, I'll just call it fear and trepidation about marketing, and it gets procrastinated. So we'll discuss why prioritizing and not procrastinating marketing is key to scaling your business. We'll get into some practical tips there. And then we've got, as we move into August, we're going to have a couple of other guests that are going to be joining us. And we're going to have some AI topics coming up as well. I don't want to just do hype on AI. I want to do very, very practical conversations on that. But we use AI really across our business. We're going to share some of the tips that we use with our clients with you so you can use those in your business. How to reach us. It's our telephone, email. We are on X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please reach out to us there, ask your comments. Let us know how we can help you because ultimately the focus in all of our businesses are first to help and second, if you can't do it on your own, to do it for you or to teach you how to do it. So I'll close out today thanking you for your time. Look forward to seeing you again next week, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day.